So I'm delighted to introduce our next session. Each year for the global conference, which is normally held in Europe, we have a tradition on the first day that we invite a top 20 ranked European school president or dean to give an address to the audience. And I'm delighted to introduce and welcome the president and dean of a top 20 ranked European school. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm round of applause for Jörg Rocholl, the president of ESMT Berlin.
Thank you very much for this very warm welcome. And Andrew, thank you so much for the invitation to be here with you today. It's a great delight, a great honor to be here. And it's obviously only a short distance for me to come here today. So therefore, let me also say thank you very much for selecting Berlin as the place for the conference this year. I think it's a great choice, and I would like to elaborate a little bit on it. So the fact that Berlin is a very special place obviously is not surprising, or may not sound surprising given that we are here, that ESMT is here. But let me say that we've had actually again and again great comments and feedback about the place. And let me just give you my personal perspective on it. I first came to Berlin, I grew up in the western part of Germany. I first came to Berlin in 1989, in June of 1989, as a high school student. And then it was still a separated city. It had the western part, the eastern part. When you looked into the distribution of where one could go, it was 5 days in the west, 1 day in the east. I should say, in terms of the attractiveness of the places, one rather should have done the opposite, but it was rather the fact that it was not so easy to visit the East. And we had then, I saw a poll in one of our school books where they asked the question, what do you think when, and this was in June 1989. So they asked, what do you think, when will Germany be united again? When will Germany be united again? And 20% of the people said within the next 5 years, 80% said it will come at some later stage. When I saw this poll and when I saw that 20% said it will be within the next 5 years, I thought it's completely ridiculous. It will never happen within the next 5 years. And then, in fact, the wall fell just 6 months after, 5 months after. German unification just followed 16 months after. So in that sense, you could say we are here really in a city of disruption, of real disruption, of things that changed overnight, that obviously had a certain development beforehand, but where this disruption is very visible. And I would like to come back to this disruption and how it affects also us as business schools. You see this maybe in particular, and I know some of you just told me that when you had your tour yesterday that you also walked by ESMT. ESMT is located in the former headquarters of socialism on German soil. So this is where really the governing council, the supreme governing council of the GDR resided. And I would call it one of the nicest ironies of German history that what used to be the headquarters of socialism on German soil is now a place for a business school that attracts students from all over the world, 100 different nationalities, faculty members from all over the world, 20 different nationalities, that is accredited by EMBA and others, and really prides itself of its original diversity and its international reach. So in that sense, things really can change, and Berlin is probably most visible for this type of change. Maybe let me try to explain it a little bit in a quiz that I normally do with guests from abroad, and now I'm coming more to the economic part, thinking about the question, what is similar, what is different for Berlin, let's say if you compare it to other major European capitals, say to London or to Paris. And I often get the question, so what is different, what is the same between Berlin, London, and Paris? And my answer is always in terms of a question. The question being as follows, to say, if you just think about it economically, and this is, I've done this for 10 years now, things have changed, and I will come back to that. So I said very traditionally, what would happen, just economically speaking, if you took away London from the UK? What would happen economically if basically London was not there anymore? Probably the answer would be it would be quite different. It would be actually quite less of economic wealth if you took out London. Likewise, when I asked the question about France, what would happen economically speaking if you took out Paris, then the answer would be very similar. It would probably be that the average GDP in France would be much lower without Paris than with Paris. If you look at Germany and if you look at Berlin, the answer is very different. Here, Berlin has a GDP per capita which is more or less on average in German comparison. And this has obviously to do, to a large extent, with the aspects that come from German separation, so that after World War II, many major corporations that were created here in Berlin actually moved to the western part of the country. So think of the companies like Deutsche Bank, Allianz, Siemens, and so on. Those companies going to Frankfurt, to Munich, simply because of the fact that in this little island, West Berlin, in which we are here right now, there was no chance really for these companies to flourish, to develop, and really to have a market. So this means all these companies went away, and this led to the fact that there is now a very broad economic diversity of economic regions, economic strengths across Germany. As I said, this has mainly, of course, to do with German separation, but it's maybe a broader topic of Germany that you see lots of these so-called hidden champions, so companies that no one really knows of, that still are market leaders in their respective fields. You see these companies located not just in the capital, not just even in the major cities, but rather located across the board in various parts of the country. And this is, I would say, it's a very defining criterion for what you see here. Mittelstand, family-owned business, hidden champions to play a much bigger role here than they would play in other parts of the world, and therefore also providing this broader economic diversity and also the equal spread of what is happening across the country. So now, thinking about Berlin as a city of disruption, I think we can all say, and in particular when I talk to you as my peer deans, that we are again in a city and also in a time of real disruption. So disruption is again symbolizing very vividly what we have to deal with, that what we also have to offer to our students, to our executives, what we have to be prepared for when we think about what is happening around us and how do we actually define and develop the strategies for our schools. When I if I asked you, and I saw this also, obviously also on the great program that Andrew and his team have brought together, there are certain aspects that I hear again and again. I hear them from fellow deans, I hear them from our students, and they come back more or less to the following points. The first one is very clear, is what is happening around us in terms of technology. So the technological advances, the use of artificial intelligence, also the way in which we actually interact, in which we deal with our students and our executives from, say, online learning, hybrid learning, avatars, and so on. This actually has been a real revolution over the last couple of years and really is also meant to create new opportunities, also new ideas of how we can interact. It's also interesting when you take this from a broader perspective that when you look at the most highly capitalized companies in the world at this point of time, most of these companies are platform companies, the likes of Google, Amazon, and Meta, and so on. And what is interesting is that when you look at the share of those companies that are most highly capitalized, the share of these companies that initially was funded by venture capital has increased all the time. So this means we now have companies at the top of the market capitalization that most of them, the very far majority of them, have been initially financed by venture capital. Why is this? Well, this is because there are new business models that cannot be captured, for example, by, you could say, traditional bank loans, bank credit, where you wouldn't have the expertise, you wouldn't have the risk willingness, the risk appetite to really fund these companies. What you really would need is new ideas that are followed by venture capitalists who have the expertise, who also say, well, it may not work, it may work. So if you have maybe 10 investments, only if one really succeeds, it's a great success. Which, by the way, this is a side note, is exactly the opposite to the political system that we face. Here the saying is, if you take 10 decisions and one is wrong, so 9 are right and 1 is wrong, then you basically get a legal case against you. So it's basically what makes political decision-making and venture capital decision-making so different. So this is one aspect that we have to deal with. Now, I'll obviously come back to this. The second one is, and this is also, just when we were talking here, it's one that is of such large importance, is geopolitics. So when you think again, and let me start with Germany, I talked about Berlin and say the geopolitical developments that have shaped this city over the last 35 years. Now again, Germany is a prime example of what you would call an open economy. So an economy that really benefits a lot from the fact that it really can basically most freely operate in global markets when it comes to supply chains, when it comes to exports. The hidden champions often are active in markets which are so small that actually if you only wanted to be active in these markets in your country, it would not be scaling efficient, right? So it really would mean that you have to go to other markets, that you have to really build on global trade to make it work, that you really have to go to all parts of the world to really make it succeed. And therefore, this openness is now coming under pressure. We see this with supply chains that have come under pressure, starting with the corona pandemic. Now we have tariffs as a big question, and sometimes maybe it's not even just the tariffs, it's rather the uncertainty that come from tariffs, where you don't know what are the tariffs right now, to whom do they apply, how long will they apply for. So this is really the second big part that now we have to be prepared for. And the third one, and again, you see a lot of uncertainty here, is obviously the question of sustainability. So sustainability, not something like nice to have, but really to prepare our businesses and our students who work at some point for their businesses or for other organizations, to prepare them for what is going to come. So really to make them aware of the challenges out there, to look into also questions, risks of stranded assets, for example, so where you have to run the risk that certain investments you take will not be sustainable, will not be any more profitable. So here we have climate change, loss of biodiversity, and many other aspects that come with it. I would like to bring this together in a statement. Actually, I've recently taken away from a Dean's conference I was in. And one of the fellow deans basically asked the following question in light of exactly these types of developments. He basically said, quote, "Are we preparing leaders for the world we wish existed, or the one that's actually unfolding?" So what do we actually have to think about when we feel about the next stage of the development? Is it simply sufficient to say, we have our skills, we have our research, we have our expertise to deal with questions we already know about? Or is it rather that in light of some of these disruptions I just mentioned, and as I said, disruptions are what is archetypical of what's happening in Berlin, that these disruptions are the ones that we really should look at and that we should really find answers to. So are we preparing leaders for the world we wish existed, or the one that's actually unfolding? Let me maybe start with the Berlin story. As I mentioned to you, Berlin is certainly not the economic capital of Germany. It's the political capital, it's a cultural capital, it's also the scientific capital. But we have other cities that are much more powerful from an economic perspective. However, we do see a very strong economic development with lots of startups popping up that in terms of venture capital investments into specific places, there are years in which Berlin, even more than London, has received the largest venture capital inflow of all European cities. So there's a lot happening here, there's a lot of development happening here, and this really shows also the disruption that is taking place here. Now, when we talked and when we discussed what would it be that I should concentrate on in my speech, in my contribution, really meant as food for thought and also for the discussion, we thought, okay, what is it actually that we should try to think about if it's not just more of the same, but rather a fundamentally disruptive and disrupting world in which we are, in which we as business schools need to prepare our future leaders. Let me first say that I strongly believe, and I'm very delighted to also actually been asked to contribute to the Ember magazine that actually has just come out, to actually say that we as business schools should always have the claim, the ambition to be relevant, not just be followers of what we see here, but rather really to be the ones who drive that change that we currently see, so that we have the unique opportunity to influence and to have an impact on those current or future leaders who really would like to be, say, the change makers of tomorrow, those who really would like to be equipped with the skills to really make this change. And this is what I see, you could say, as our societal expectation, that we prepare our business leaders for what they can do in order to shape business and society going forward. And it's the unique opportunity. It's actually a really great privilege to have a contribution on this. So let me therefore try to outline maybe 5 aspects that I would find to be very important when we think about the playbook that is of relevance. First of all, I think we should, even more than we do today, embrace the entrepreneurial thinking and the power of innovation. We are in a situation where disruptive innovation has become more and more important. If you think back 2 years ago, there was not yet really ChatGPT, and how much has this already changed us, has changed our lives, how much it actually has impacted us as well as our students, maybe sometimes also in ways that we would like to get a better view of. So therefore, the whole question of how to help our students to be entrepreneurial change makers, to make them equipped in an academic sense, but also in an applied sense of what they can do, which new opportunities they can grasp, how they can really get their thinking also into action. The German philosopher Leibniz once described it in Latin as theoria cum praxis, so really how to apply theory to practice. The second one is, I would not argue for the fact that we should now only have computer scientists in business schools or train computer scientists in business schools, or not even try to make managers computer scientists like in their expertise. But what I would certainly argue for is the fact that we need the ability to translate strategy into technology or technology into strategy. So being able to make use of all the technologies we have currently and how to translate them into something that can be used for developing and also implementing strategy. So this translationary aspect I find is extremely important. Third, we also face, whether we want or not, we face that companies see increasing expectations from all parts of society in order to be able to answer these questions. You could say to have a responsibility to engage in meaningful discussions with society. So this means also the question of the broader operation of a company in our society, the social impact companies have, does play a very important role. I can just say from our experience at ESMT, the so-called social impact projects where students go out in groups to solve really fundamental questions, very practical questions, achieve a lot of recognition, a lot of interest by students. They really like it because they can use their entrepreneurial skills for very practical, hands-on challenges, and they can make this work. So for example, I had a fantastic student group that actually worked on reorganizing a paper recycling factory in Kenya. And so, in Ethiopia, and I was really stunned by what they had. I mean, they showed me the picture beforehand. It was all a mess, and then they came and helped the local team to implement that. And I couldn't think of it as actually of a better preparation also for what is going to come later on in their business life, or if they work for other parts outside business, to be prepared for this, to really engage in this work and really make it work. Not just learn, but rather, as my PhD advisor said, and here I would maybe apply it even in a very verbatim sense, to get your hands dirty, to really understand, apply these concepts and make them work. This is also what we try to engage in, say, inspire students with, that there are so many great opportunities now of finding ideas, implementing these ideas, because as many of us may say, oh, these are quite significant challenges that we currently see, they also have great opportunities aligned with them. And to prepare our students, to inspire them to make use of these opportunities, I find is a very important one. The fourth one I think of is that we need, and this is great that we have the conference here, this is exactly the type of exchange we need, but let's never forget that we even need more of this global exchange, that we really need to work together on a global scale. I'm completely convinced globalization will not stop. It's rather going to develop maybe in different ways, maybe also in ways which will even benefit more of the planet than they have benefited so far. And therefore, I would also argue for even more global interaction. As I said, we have 100 different nationalities on campus. I rather would like to have 150 different nationalities on campus, really to make it even more global, more connected. And at the same time, also try to bring together current students to current global leaders. So really to engage in a discussion where the current global leaders are challenged by the future global leaders, and really to engage in a discussion in which this learning from each other makes even more sense. So you could say it's not just learning across disciplines, which is important, technology, business, academia, politics, science, but also to think more about this intergenerational learning that can take place, in particular at a point of time where the expertise that young people have, or relatively young people have, might in some relevant cases even be more important and more relevant than what maybe more experienced, more senior people may have. And this engaging, this bringing together is also something that, for example, we at ESMT have established as what we call the Berlin Global Dialogue. So it's really global, but it's also meant to bring students together with world leaders. So last year we had the great privilege of inviting and also welcoming French President Emmanuel Macron, and he actually spent an hour or so with students to discuss what are really the topics students really think are most relevant at this point of time. And I had the impression actually, obviously he didn't say that, but I had the impression maybe he enjoyed that interaction even more than the action with many of the other peers, because this is obviously what these leaders have all the time. If they can really engage with young people with new ideas, this really helps shape everything. And then finally, I mentioned this already, but I truly believe in it, that we, despite all the challenges, also despite all the headwinds we currently see, to really try to lead sustainability in everything we do. It is something in the end that is not just nice to have, something, say, wishful thinking, but something that really provides the elements for much more that is going to come, for future business advantages, so for competitiveness in markets, and for a long-term, in a real sense, sustainable advantage that can go on. So therefore, what I'd like to bring across before also taking the questions is, I think we are at a historical juncture for what is going to happen for business school education. I think we have all the ingredients for playing and for continuing to play a very important role in there. And I think we have also so many great opportunities now in the way we engage with students, be it physical, be it online, hybrid, with the way of how we can induce, say, experiential learning, hands-on learning, things they can apply right away. So that I would just say what the core message I would like to bring across is, in this period of change, we can really play a very important role because it's us who really have the great opportunity to engage with those who will drive this change and those who would really like to bring together and bring forward what is happening worldwide in business and society. And therefore, what I would hope from this great conference, from obviously the great work AMBA does, that we feel inspired, not only by maybe many of the thoughts we can exchange over these couple of days, but also for them to transcend into actionable items along the way. So thank you very much for your attention, and now I'm very happy to take questions, comments, anything else. Thank you. And I think, Andrew, you said there were microphones coming around, right? Oh, okay, so maybe we'll start in the first row. No, actually, do we have the mic here? Ah, there it's coming. Good, great.
Thank you very much for these inspiring ideas. I'm Tommy Gorfield from ESCA in Casablanca, Morocco. My question is about the role of business education and geopolitics. What is the role of learning geopolitics now in your school, and what could it be in the coming years, just to help our graduates to make the right decision in investment, business, trade, and everything?
Yeah, a very good question, and that's exactly actually also something we've been thinking about quite a lot. The one thing I mentioned is, you could say, more creating platforms for the exchange between political leaders and business leaders, really to learn from each other, to understand what is currently going on. And then from a curricular perspective, what we have implemented are really classes on, you could say, broadly geopolitics. So we've had, for the first time last year, a class taught by a former diplomat, someone who actually was the German ambassador to the United States, to the United Kingdom, someone who had then continued working in a company, and really to engage with students on discussion on the different, say, regions of the world. What are, say, political points you need to consider? To also think about what does it mean for you as creating a company, building a company, what does it mean in terms of the impact it has, what is it also that you need to be prepared for when you engage in global trade, when it comes to, as I said, topics like tariffs, tensions, but then also raw resources that have become a major point of attention also in this country, rare earths, for example. Also to keep in mind, you could say in the broader sense, the acting of a corporation, not just in a business sense, but how it relates to a broader context. And we would like to build on this. We would like to have more classes of this kind. I should say it's maybe a little bit more experimenting at this point of time to also think about what actually is the right format, the right setting. But the feedback we've received from the students was really outstanding. I mean, they said that's exactly what we would like to need in order to understand the world in a broader sense of what's happening around us, and to get basically a top-notch view from someone who has really dealt with this throughout, in this case, his life, something that, for example, I couldn't provide a sufficient expertise on, and really to broaden the views, the perspectives of our students in this sense. And let me just add, and also very happy to try to think about other ideas in which this may work to really prepare our leaders for this, or the future leaders for this.
Can I ask you a question by quoting Erich Honecker, of all people? The former East German leader said, he had this slogan, "Vorwärts immer, rückwärts nimmer." Always forward, never backward. Are there times when we would benefit from not just looking backwards, but walking backwards, going back rather than going forward?
So first let me say Erich Honecker was the former inhabitant of the building ESMT is in. So if you ever, or if you now have the time, or if you ever come back to Berlin, let me know and I'll show you Erich Honecker's office. Sometimes I'm asked whether I am in Erich Honecker's office. I can tell you it's far too big for me. It would actually just blow out of relation if I went to Erich Honecker's office. There's now, so to say, his faked bathroom in behind. And so I could say a lot of many stories. We also have a rose garden that his wife planted in the garden of ESMT, which we have to preserve. There are conservatory requirements for the rose garden. So I think, as I just mentioned, what I think of what we face right now reminds me in many ways in terms of the significance of the disruption of what we experienced here in Berlin in '89. I'm not from Berlin originally, but nonetheless, I feel very much reminded of the disruption then. something that I felt was not going to happen, happened within 6 months. And so therefore, what I would like to argue is not going back to exactly the situation, but keeping a mindset in which we also keep it possible that very fundamental things are going to change and how to best make actually use of the change. So this is why when I have my graduation speeches to our students, I always talk about them in terms of change makers. So those who really grasp new opportunities and grasp them in a new way with all the creativity that comes with it, and say there is no doubt that Berlin as a whole, Germany as a whole, Europe as a whole has benefited so enormously from the fall of the Berlin Wall just 36 years ago that there are so many more opportunities now that we can grasp here. And in that sense, I would say the place we are in Berlin, the place at which we are, where Erich Honecker had his office, just remind us that I wouldn't have thought at that point of time that at some point I would be in the office of Erich Honecker running the show. I mean, this would have been unthinkable when I was there. So that's really the type of motivation and inspiration I take out of this. Yeah, please. Maybe if you could just, okay, great, thank you.
Hello, Celine Floyd from Capfinity. It's been great to hear you talk about the rate of change, and I think that is very clear. Just interested in your view of whether, as an industry, we are adapting quickly enough, just in your general opinion, if we're doing enough to adapt and prepare for the change that's coming, or if we're all being a little bit slow still.
Yeah, great question, and probably the answer is, or the answer probably we can only give ex post whether we were indeed quick enough, but let me take a little bit of optimism out of the following. When we all look back 5 years ago when the pandemic crisis hit, I can just imagine, and I know this holds for all of you as well as for us, how fast we were able to basically change from, say, the day before the pandemic into the day of the pandemic, transforming the whole learning experience, and also actually not just doing it, but also keeping it, keeping lots of the great elements we have learned about, thinking about new ways of engaging with colleagues, with students, and being part of this. So therefore, I have a genuine belief that business schools can adapt to this and will adapt to it, because in the end, we also have to face the competition, not just among us, that's one thing, but also there are many new players coming up, online learning platforms, other types of industries, let's say consulting firms entering into what we do. But in the end, I still believe we have the agility, we have the competence, and we have the reputation, our research reputation, what people trust in us, or where people put trust in us, that we really can give very meaningful answers to these questions. And that's what I feel inspired by. But again, we need to be quick enough, and at the same time maybe not be too quick by just following trends, or let's say following volatility that is not really a trend that could be there. So therefore using our judgment, our independence in doing exactly this.
Hello, hi, thank you for a wonderful speech. My name is Hikmat Abdurrahmanov. I'm from Uzbekistan, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of a very young university, a business school, just 5 years old. Building up on your previous comment, I just would like to ask, what would you recommend to young but very ambitious business schools? Can we compete with large institutions like yours? And what should be, let's say, top 3 things we have to do in order to be competitive? Thanks.
So, I mean, in that sense, look at ESMT. We are not old, actually. We were only founded in 2002. So we celebrated our 20th anniversary. I have good memories of that just 2.5 years ago. And I would say the good thing is, given all the technological disruption that we see, all the disruption overall, it's actually possible to get things done. And I would say the great opportunity is, first, a young institution most of the time is more agile than maybe the established ones. The established ones have a lot of reputation, there's no doubt about it. But the agility is a great advantage. It's maybe also an advantage to be able to take more risk in some decisions, to be bolder in certain decisions, because this is what you can afford to do. And then the other part is, and I've been myself to Uzbekistan, I'm very impressed also by the development in your country, to also think about the fact that business school education has become truly global over the last, say, decades. So it's not the case anymore that also here in Germany, we looked for many decades, we just looked into the United States. Now there are also world-class institutions in Europe, in Germany, in many other parts of the world. And we see also a very specific knowledge that you have for your part of the world, the same as we have it, let's say, for hidden champions, for example. And this very specific knowledge is great to have and also to show to other parts of the world, because it's something that simply cannot be copied, and it's very genuine in what you do. So therefore, I would take a lot of courage in following what you do. Thank you. Thank you very much for everything. Thank you.